Hello everyone and welcome back to DiabloCast, your Diablo 3 podcast. Here's where we keep you up to date on all things Diablo 3 related and share with you our thoughts and opinions on any recent news and events. And as always, I am your host, Dennis Forrest Duhamel, and with me as always is Kevin Sixen Carlino.
What's up, guys?
And Tyler isn't here this week for some reason. What the hell is he doing this week, Kevin?
He's like off doing Real Life or something like that. You ever heard of that game, Real Life?
What a joke. Absolutely unbelievable. On today's list of topics, we have their plans to still release Diablo in 2011. We also have talk about Diablo 3 possibly coming to consoles, a little information about questing and story in Diablo 3. We have some further clarification on what's going to be contained within the beta, a little bit of discussion about gaming systems in Diablo 3, and then a whole heap of a lot of discussion about PvP. Besides just the general system itself, we're also going to be talking about the health globes in PvP. So with that said, let's just go ahead and go right into our first topic, which is going to be Blizzard's plans to release Diablo in 2011. In a recent interview with AtomicGamer, the lead content designer of Diablo 3, Kevin Martins, reconfirmed their plans to still release the game in 2011. Now, it was just a couple weeks ago where we were informed that that was even their intention to begin with, but basically getting this reconfirmation so close to the May conference call is really exciting news, solely because of the fact that if they're still planning to release in 2011 with a 6-month beta, that means we might very well be seeing beta sometime in the near future. So that's basically it. We just basically reconfirmed that they're still looking to release the game this year. Also in that same interview, we had some discussion about consoles and the questing and story within the game. So Kevin, you mind basically explaining a little bit further about those two things?
Sure. So basically, one of the questions to Kevin Martins was how he felt about Diablo 3 on the consoles and what he thought about the PC, gaming death. And basically what he said was, gaming on PCs isn't dying, you guys are crazy. And he said that they're still definitely looking into porting a Diablo 3-like game to the console. So I guess basically Blizzard isn't telling the public that they want to directly port Diablo 3. They're saying that they want something similar to the game. So I mean, whether we're going to see the exact game or some kind of variation, maybe an expansion, maybe a spin-off, I don't really know. But they're definitely still looking into it. And something else that Dennis just mentioned was that one of the questions to Kevin Martins was what he felt needed to be changed from Diablo 2 to Diablo 3. And the big thing he said was the quests and the storyline. So something that they're definitely changing from D2 to D3 is how the game is progressing and maybe how acts are structured. Basically, like we were talking about last week, it's just one giant world. And the quest kind of takes you throughout the world. I mean, yeah, Diablo 2 did that as well, but I mean, you kind of just like after you completed the act, you teleported to a different part of the world, which really isn't going to be the case this time around. Now we're going to have an actual storyline and quest line that allows us to progress throughout the world in a realistic manner.
Yeah, and I know something else that he also touched on was just the fact that there's going to be a lot more quests and a greater variety, things that are much more interesting than just you have to go kill this guy and pick up a scroll, basically. And then that actually kind of swings us back to the discussion of randomization that we had in the last week's podcast, and how these pockets of randomized areas that are going to be within the game, there can be quest systems in there just randomly that you're going to encounter, not every time but every once in a while, like as an example, the broken down wagon with the guy who needs you to go get his tools back or whatever may have it. And then also the fact that there's going to be random dungeons and all these things. So that's basically questing. I guess the basic wrap up of it is the fact that it's going to be much more involved in a much more robust questing system than we had in D2. Now, in terms of story, I know that this was something that was really talked on a lot at BlizzCon last year. Mainly that they want to, I think the term they used was play, don't tell when it comes to story, meaning, that they're going to want us to experience the story as we're playing the game. So one of the major examples they used was you would click on a tome and you could still run around the dungeon and keep slaying demons, and the story would be kicked back to you. Now, personally, I think this is a really cool system. I don't know about yourself, Kevin, but I think that's pretty neat. Instead of having to sit there and listen to Deckard Cain talk to us for 40 minutes.
Wow, what's wrong with Deckard Cain?
Oh, nothing. I mean, and the man himself who voices him is pretty phenomenal, but
definitely.
It gets pretty annoying sitting there for a long time, you know?
Yeah, I mean, actually got a chance to check out the system a couple times at the last couple of BlizzCons, and I mean, it's actually really cool because not only does it allow you to pick up these different journals or diaries, whatever it is that drops. Basically, an item drops, you pick it up, or I mean, you pick it up from something around the environment that you're in. So you pick it up, it goes into your quest log, and now you can listen to them talk. And the narrator isn't Deckard Cain or anything; it's actually the person that wrote that specific journal. So at the last BlizzCon, I believe. We went and found like King Leoric's soul or something, and we were listening to the different stories he told through his own narration. It was pretty sweet.
Yeah, so I mean, it certainly was a really cool interview. Again, that AtomicGamer had set up. He basically touched on a lot of things, but besides their 2011 release plan that's still going on, the fact that they went over consoles, the questing and story, and then as you mentioned, talking about the fact that the storyline isn't going to be basically a separation, a clear, cold separation between Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. It's more we're progressing with the in-depth story, and it may have us bouncing in between the acts and different things are taking place. And that actually is going to go ahead and segue us right into our next discussion, which is going to be some further beta info that we got from Bashiok. Now, recently, over on the official Diablo 3 forums for Battle.net, we had some discussion, again, like I mentioned, from Bashiok about the beta. People had asked, essentially, what we could be expecting to see in the beta and or before the beta. And Bashiok went into a few topics, the first of which is the fact that we've actually seen at least bits and pieces of the first 3 acts in the game. Something else that he specifically mentioned when discussing the contents of the beta is the fact that they're actually trying to be reducing spoilers as much as possible. So from this, we can basically make the inference that there's not going to be a lot of boss fights and a lot of the storyline isn't going to be revealed. Was there anything else in that article that you want to make mention of, Kevin?
Well, I mean, as far as the storyline goes, you're kind of correct. And I mean, I thought maybe we should just discuss this a little bit. The Diablo 2 beta only had the first act, so I'm kind of curious as to how they're going to go about doing this for the Diablo 3 beta. I mean, like you said, they're trying to, cut back on any spoilers and storylines stuff that they can give away. So, I mean, it would kind of be a disappointment to only play the first act, especially since, like Bashiok said, we've seen the first 3 already. So I'm kind of just curious as to how this might happen.
I almost have the feeling that like you just mentioned, we've seen bits and pieces of the first 3 acts, or even I guess more specifically, you can say we've seen several zones that are going to be within the game, if you want to use that terminology. So I feel like we're going to have access to these zones, maybe not in their entirety, but a portion of these different zones, and they're not going to implement the story so much, but we'll still be able to roam throughout and complete random quests that are kind of impartial to the main storyline. Because I feel like the main quest line is almost going to be entirely removed from the beta. And again, we'll still have access to bits and pieces of the different zones or acts or whatever you want to call it. That way the testing can still be thorough enough to actually accomplish something, but at the same time not give away the story.
That's actually probably a good point. I mean, especially with all the randomized events that they have going to happen. I mean, it makes sense that these randomized events don't particularly take place within the storyline. So, I mean, that's definitely possible. The one thing is, I mean, what if there are landmarks that kind of give away what's going to happen in the story? I mean, if we say Act 4 is in hell, I mean, and the game just stops, so there's eventually a last part of the game where you can't go. I mean, I think we can kind of assume what's going to happen.
Yeah. I suppose that's definitely the case. And then I guess something else we could just briefly mention too is that I'm sure at least a portion of the beta is going to be tooling around with the PvP system, testing that out. Although, many people are going to say that's not the focus. They don't care. They're not going to even implement it at all. I'll agree that it's not their focus. They've said it's not their focus, so to disagree with that would be idiotic. But I'll agree it's not their focus, but that's something, I feel like that's something they're still going to incorporate because they want to see if there's just absurd imbalances before the game comes out, and allowing people basically time to get their hands in there and play around with different builds, different rune settings, different setups and gear and all that stuff. It's going to tell them if there's any major issues that they need to fix. So yeah, I mean, I'm just guessing it's going to be the single player with different zones, different acts, main storyline removed, and then the PvP.
I actually agree with you. I mean, and if you think back, if they let us balance the PvP, it'll kind of allow them to gauge how boss fights are going to go, especially if they have those removed. Because if you can remember, the PvP is supposed to play out kind of similar to how PvE boss fights are supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, I guess you can call it diminishing
Toughness.
returns and stuff, yeah,
Right.
and all that jazz. Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. Either way, I mean, we're all excited for the beta, and it is speculation, but I think we pretty much nailed it on the head as in terms of what we can expect from the upcoming beta. Now, specifically talking about that, we're actually going to move on into the discussion of when we're going to be hearing about it, or when we will possibly be hearing about it. Well, we were recently informed that the May conference call, which was previously slated for the 5th of May, Cinco de Mayo, is now actually going to be pushed back 4 days to the 9th. Is that correct, Kevin?
That is correct. I mean, I don't think they actually ever came out publicly and said, "Hey, it's going to be the 5th." It's kind of just something that we all assumed. Basically, the last 2, maybe 3 years, the conference calls have been the first Thursday of the month. So it's always been. I mean, I think it was like the 6th or the 7th, the 6th, and now it should have been the 5th, or maybe I'm backwards. I don't know. But yeah, basically, it should have been the 5th, following that trend, and now they're moving it to the Monday. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's anything we can take from that. Maybe it's just they decided to push it back a little bit, or maybe it's that they realized they needed 4 more days to get the beta ready. That's
Maybe.
probably. I don't think.
Sounds good to me.
Definitely don't think it's that, but who knows? Now, and again, something else. We're talking about the beta, and we talked about figuring out when is it going to get released? Do we have any idea about that? Well, something else that we're going to want to talk about as well is Bashiok talking about the gaming systems. Now, what he had said, basically, is that there's still several systems yet to be revealed. A few of them that I know right off the top of my head is the trading system. We still need to figure out more about how BattleNet's going to work, BattleNet 2.0, how it's basically going to be implemented with Diablo 3. And then there's also some unknown systems. Any kind of idea as to what those may be?
I mean, I have no idea. I mean, they've already talked about how Encounter is going to work. I mean, we still aren't 100% sure as to how the Demon Hunter's resource system is going to work. I mean, Cyber and I have been kind of theory crafting a bit back when we did the Demon Hunter interview, but I mean, we still don't know about that. So there's still a couple of things that I guess they could possibly toss out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's all speculation, and actually, I suppose one of the biggest things that we are going to want to talk about is the possible end game, because I know that they said that there's something like besides just PvP and besides just bail runs, if you will, using that just as a general terminology for grinding bosses or grinding dungeons. So there's something else. We just don't know what it is yet. At least I'm hoping I'm pretty sure that's what they implied, right? I believe hearing that there was something in the works that we don't know about yet.
Oh, yeah. As far as endgame goes, they've said it a bunch of different times. Like, I think at the various BlizzCons and the open QAs, people have asked, how do you plan on doing endgame? Just to, like you said, to stop the bail runs and the chaos runs. And basically, Jay Wilson said well, we've got some cool plans, but that's it.
Yeah, thanks for the insight there, buddy. But anyways, the whole reason we're talking about this and all the systems within the game is that Bashiok mentioned recently that they're going to be announcing every single system before the beta starts. So before we hear about the beta, we're going to know all of these gaming systems, every system within the game, rather. And then CyberDragon specifically, or Tyler, as we so affectionately know him here on the podcast, he asked when we're going to be finding that out, or if they know kind of a schedule of releasing this information. And he was responded to with yes, very specifically, implying that they have kind of a set timeline here for announcing the upcoming systems. And I guess from there you could infer that they have a set idea of when the beta is going to start. So that's exciting.
Which could potentially mean that they're shooting for sometime in the summer release of the beta, which would mean that we should hopefully hear about that at the conference call. So,
fingers crossed. We got it's just a couple of weeks, so it's not too far away. I think like 2.5 weeks until that ever fateful day.
Yeah, but it should have been 2 weeks exactly. 5th. Man.
I know you're a little peeved about that. You have obligations too on the 9th, don't you? So you're not going to be around for that.
That's bad.
It's Bad news bears. All right, well, going from that, specifically talking about the gaming systems, I know that you actually recently wrote an article up on your website, DiabloFans.com, talking a little bit about several of the gaming systems. You mind just explaining to people at home about that, what you went over?
Yeah, so recently there's been a little bit of discussion on how breakpoints are going to work in Diablo 3, and other than that, Bashiok went back over how runestones are going to work, and then a little bit about gems. So I guess I'll start off with what we already know. The runestones, basically there's something like 550 viable class skills. Now that is combining the 5 possible runes, the 5 classes. Oh, sorry, I kind of said that wrong. There's 550 possible skills total, obviously not per class, because that would be ridiculous, you know?
Yeah.
All right, so between the 5 runes and the 5 classes, that makes about 22 as an average of skills per class. Now, I mean, yeah, that number might be off by 1, 2, you know, up or down here or there, but it should be about 22 possible skills per class. Now, with that said, some runes are only going to affect the skill partially, I guess you could say. So that means that there's still going to be the skill itself. I guess we can refer to it as the vanilla or the classic skill. So basically, you use this skill, this is what happens, and that's it. So now there's going to be 1 or 2 runes that are just going to affect maybe the casting time or the amount of damage it does, or maybe how often you can do it, like the cooldown. But all the other runes are going to specifically change how the skill itself works. So, like, for example, Hydra. I know if you put one of the runes in Hydra, it gives you, like, magic. I don't even know what it's called, like Magic Hydra.
I think it's like Arcane Hydra.
Yeah,
or something like
Arcane.
that.
There you go. I always, well, I mean, because I play a mage in World of Warcraft, I just call it the Magic trait. Or
they're all Magic
whatever.
Hydras.
Yeah, I guess, I guess that's true. Yeah, so, I mean, runestones we basically know a lot about. I mean, I guess it's kind of new for anybody who doesn't really follow. So basically, most of the runes are going to completely change how the skill looks or maybe works, but for the most part, I mean, the skill itself is going to have a bunch of different potential possibilities as far as runestones go. Now, gems previously said they were only going to let the 5th level of gems drop, which means that we have a ridiculous amount of gems to collect in order to hit the very last level. So Bashiok said that they changed that. Now they're going to allow a couple levels past the 5th. They didn't actually say, so maybe something like the 7th, 8th-ish kind of a thing. But I guess we don't really know for sure. However, what he did say was that there's going to be a new robust system for trading. Now, that's huge because that kind of implies an auction house. I mean, an auction house I think would be great, and this is something that we've discussed here and there over the last couple casts. So now, I guess how he mentioned this was that there would be a robust system that'll make it more feasible to sell off a ton of gems, earn any money back that you can, and then you can turn that back into gems later. So essentially, we know that gold is going to be the currency in Diablo 3, or at least that's what Blizzard is shooting for. So with gold being the currency, something like an auction house would have to be the case. Yes? No, Dennis?
Yeah, I mean, that's. I mean, based on specifically what he said, it seems like that's what we're looking at. I mean, I can't fathom what else it would be, unless you have some mule that you put your wares on and he brings it to town and brings it back to you or something like that. Which actually, oddly enough, that's almost exactly what they do in Torchlight. You've got a pet,
right?
You know, you can send him back home and he'll bring gold back to you. But that's just, I mean, that's kind of just silly, to be honest with you. I don't know. I didn't. I thought that was kind of an odd function. I mean, it's very convenient, but kind of odd that there's a cat running around with you in this dungeon. Like, what in God's name? But I mean, no, it makes a lot of sense. He said, you know, specifically, there's going to be a more robust trading system that's going to make it more feasible to sell off a ton of gems, earn wealth, and then buy back gems later on. Now, obviously, he was specifically mentioning gems, but there isn't just going to be an auction house for solely gems. It's going to be where you can sell anything that's not basically bound to you, if you will. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the implication behind that. At least that's what I would take from it.
Completely agreed. And some cool things that they're doing with the World of Warcraft auction house is that they're allowing you to remotely sell stuff from both their website and portable devices like smartphones and stuff like that. So, I mean, think about this. You could be sitting in class one day, and you could go ahead and sell any items you want in the Diablo auction house. Yeah?
Yeah, no, and I'll say two things on what you just said. For one, people are going to flame you for mentioning WoW.
What can I say?
But it doesn't matter because I mean, for one, I think that's ridiculous because it's from the same damn company. Like
Right,
you have to mention it because they're learning things from WoW that they're bringing into future games. This is in one of their future games that they're learning things from and pulling into, and the same thing is going to be the case for their next MMO. When their next MMO comes out, it's going to be logical for us to mention WoW.
Exactly.
But the next thing that I want to mention on what you said is talking about the integration of, you know, an application to your Droid or to your iPhone or whatever you may have. What other big phones are there? I don't know or care
iPhone.
Really. Yeah, okay, that's it.
That's about it. Yeah.
So, but that's actually something that's really big, and we're looking at the evolution of, the addition of BattleNet 2.0 and Facebook integration and, you know, cross gaming communication. They're trying to kind of seamlessly connect their whole fan base to make. I mean, really, business-wise, it's just to make people more drawn into everything. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely.
You're playing StarCraft 2. You see your buddy on WoW. You're like, oh, I'm kind of tired of StarCraft. Let me hop on WoW, though. Oh,
exactly.
my subscription's canceled. Let me renew it because my buddy's playing. You know, like stuff like that. I mean, that's legitimate, though. Or when, you know, people are playing StarCraft right now, as soon as Diablo 3 comes out and they see half their friends list in Diablo 3... I mean, really though, doesn't that? I mean, that's pretty.
Definitely.
That's the way it is. But you know, it's a cool idea, selling and purchasing things remotely when you're not by your computer through an application on your phone. And I can't imagine that wouldn't be something that they include. I mean, it just seems like that's kind of the logical progression of how things are working. So yeah, there you have it. It's pretty neat though, all around. I mean, that's basically a discussion we can talk to about for hours, and the whole social media and the way it's going with gaming. But I don't know, it's pretty neat, I would have to say.
Oh, I'm right on board with you there. I mean, Blizzard itself has opened up a bunch of different mediums, and actually, I guess we could take this time to kind of help publicize them a bit. They're doing I guess they're calling it Hashcraft. It's basically you can hop on there and they'll ask some question for the day, and you can, as long as you use the proper hashtag on Twitter, they might retweet whatever you have to say. So specifically for Diablo, I remember one of them was Bashiak ask everybody to sum up the Diablo 1 lore from before or as Diablo 2, basically sum up the lore of the series, and our own Jack ended up getting retweeted because his was one of the best.
Nice. Actually, I didn't even know that. This is obviously a Twitter promotion that they've got going on, right?
Yep.
Yeah, nice. Very nice. Pretty cool stuff. All right, and then talking about the gaming systems, that's actually going to segue us right into this week's gaming system topic, which is going to be PvP. We're going to be talking specifically about the health globes in PvP, and then just generally about the system itself. Now, this is something that we had basically brought up momentarily in last week's podcast, talking about the health globes and the PvP, and just basically how they're going to work. And the biggest thing that we're actually trying to pull and bring up right now is the fact that they're going to be on those specific respawn timers. Now, I know that this is something that Tyler wasn't too thrilled about, but he's not here this week, so who gives a crap?
Nobody.
But you know, I mean, I know for myself, I've mentioned this a few times. I mentioned it last week, and then in another video I did on my channel this week, that I think that's pretty awesome, to be honest. It's going to give that competitive edge to the people who are really into it.
Definitely.
So I mean, I like that, and I know wasn't it Bashiak who even specifically mentioned that that it shouldn't be randomized. It wouldn't make sense for it to be randomized. You shouldn't be randomly having an advantage. You should have an advantage because you know something. Yeah,
what he said was randomness undermines some of the competitive nature of the arenas. So basically, what he's saying is that you could get lucky with a health globe spawn. So, I mean, maybe you're getting owned, right? And then all of a sudden, a health globe spawns right next to you as your opponent teleports away, and then you win the game because you have the health globe.
Yeah, and that's something they don't want. They always try to eliminate that aspect of randomness. And actually, this is something that's pretty interesting because I know that I was a pretty heavy arena player when I played WoW. I'm off it now. I'm I'm clean.
It's like a drug. You're off of it.
but when I was into WoW and I did the arenas, I know a really big change that they made was eliminating randomness. There used to be a lot of random stuns. I know specifically like the warrior had a mace specialization where you could get a random % chance to stun somebody. And they specifically pulled that stuff out of the game because they didn't like that random aspect that had such a big influence on the game. And I'm interested to see how those kind of things are going to take place in Diablo 3. Let's specifically talk about stuns while we're on the topic. I mean, I'm not sure if it's the case, but I feel like one of the runes for the throw axe or the throw weapon ability for the barbarian, one of the runes makes it a stun.
That would be pretty cool.
So I'm under the impression that this is going to be something that's you cast it and it happens. It's not a question. It's not going to come down to randomness. Again, specifically looking at the health globes, which is what we're talking about. It's that random aspect that they want to eliminate from the game. And I think that's pretty neat. And again, I'm going to be interested to see how they implemented that with spells and abilities when it comes to the arena as well.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, and again, this means that we don't have to wait for, I mean, I guess kind of jumping off what you were saying about the rune, say a throw axe ability, then we don't have to worry about, oh no, we have to make sure that, X spell or X kind of attack damage, maybe fire damage, cold damage, is this going to proc whenever I hit? Something like that,
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's the whole point in anything competitive. Now, again, we're going to keep reiterating this. The PvP isn't the focus. Okay, we're fine with that. But they don't want it to be stupid at the same time. I mean, I would argue that I don't think it's even much of an argument. I think it's pretty much wholly agreed that WoW is a PvE-focused game. But PvP is still a pretty big part, at least for a segment of the population. So I'm going to expect that same mentality to follow through into Diablo, if not just at release, then over time, as kind of the population and people are requesting it. So yeah, I mean, they're gonna randomization in terms of competitive play, like the arenas, is something that's not good in all aspects, the spells, the health globes, everything like that. So yeah, I guess with that said, let's just jump right into the actual discussion of the PvP system. I guess we're just gonna go over what we know about it, and then make kind of any inferences on what we think and the way things have been basically inferred up until this point. So the PvP system, there's going to be a ladder, for one. We know there's going to be a ladder. There's going to be a ranking system. Now, this is only for the 3v3. Is that correct, Kevin?
Correct. The only matches that are going to be ranked are 3v3s. However, we can play custom games. I guess we'll call it custom games just for all intents and purposes. Basically, you can play 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 4-on-2, stuff like that in custom games.
Yeah. So, the focus is going to be 3v3. We're going to have different... obviously, there's going to be different options as well in, like you said, the custom games. And I think there's discussion, there's going to be a 2v2 and there may even be a 1v1, but it's just not going to be ranked, right?
That's correct. You'll have the option to play 1v1 and 2v2, and I'm assuming through their actual matchmaking system, but the only one that they're looking to have ranked is 3v3. Yeah. And they're also balancing around 3v3 from what I understand.
Yeah. And people are going to say why. Why is that the way it is? Why can't there be rankings, and why can't the balance be around 1v1 or something? And the answer to that is just the nature of the type of game that it is. In any RPG where you've got completely different classes and a wide array of spells and abilities, and specifically looking at Diablo 3, 550 with the runes and or I think that was the number. Just something
about 550 totaling all runes and all classes.
That's an absurd number of variables to work with, and trying to balance that in between each individual class so that X build and class meets up against Y build and class meets up against Z build and class, and they're all balanced perfectly. It's pretty much impossible. There's just you really can't do that. There's always going to be, and we can talk about the classes, but there's always going to be counters from build to build, from class to class as well. And I think this is actually something we brought up in one of our first podcasts. It was either the first or the second, but what we had talked about was the fact that, okay, you can have a barbarian that is really good at tanking physical damage, or you can have one that's good at reflecting magical damage. But odds are you're not going to be able to have both and then still do a decent amount of damage. So with that said, that you're going to have a barbarian that's going to destroy other barbarians and that's going to destroy other monks, but it's going to be really weak against the witch doctor and the wizard as well. and then vice versa, and that's just how it works. Because if you could have one all-encompassing build, if you could have a barbarian that destroyed melee and casters, well then everyone would play it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so that's just the nature. That's the nature of the game. You can't really balance around a 1v1 scenario. Now, you personally, are you a fan of 1v1? Is that something that you would look for, or are you kind of in agreement just how it generally would play out?
I mean, me personally, I'm sure it would be cool to watch. Like, I love watching StarCraft 2 one-on-ones, but when I play stuff like StarCraft or really any game, I'm more of a cooperative kind of a guy. I don't really like playing by myself. I just kind of like the whole aspect of working with a teammate or multiple teammates in order to win,
Yeah. And actually, just to touch on that, not to say that you're wrong, but I do want to make the distinction pretty clear for just the people listening, that we're not arguing that one-on-one in StarCraft is the same as one-on-one in Diablo, because it is, because they can balance one-on-one in StarCraft, and they arguably do. Some people will say this isn't balanced, that's imbalanced, but I mean it's balanced enough so that there are tournaments out there willing to pay people $15,000 for first place.
Right.
That's not going to happen in an unbalanced game because people won't support that. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But again, it's the RPG. It's the element of so many different variable builds, and one class being able to be something completely different based on the build. That's nearly impossible to balance 1v1. So that's going to pull us back to what we initially were talking about. The fact that, yes, they're focusing on 3v3 for that reason, because of how RPGs don't balance out in a 1v1 scenario. You're never gonna attain that perfect balance. It just kind of doesn't work out. So yeah, that's basically that. We're gonna be looking at that 3v3 as the main focus of the game. I guess next we could talk about kind of the terrain. Now I know that we've seen that one arena, and it's been indoors with a couple pits and stuff.
Yep.
Now I know there has been talk about different types of arenas, hasn't there?
Yep. So basically, and according to their official page, they use arenas in a God, I can't think for some reason.
It's okay. Let's keep
plural.
The train rolling.
Plural. So they use the word arenas plurally, not just this one arena. And what they're saying is basically the terrain for this is not unique. They're designed with different amounts of terrain. So kind of like pits and different stuff here and there, and they also have other like means of cover. So there are kind of barricades hidden in the specific map. There are, I believe, 5 barricades hidden, one in each corner, and then one in the dead center of the map. And I think that a lot of this is going to be terrain. So, for example, I believe we talked about this earlier. The sorceress, the wizard, can't teleport through barricades. They can't teleport through pits and stuff like that. So basically, nobody has a competitive edge as far as that goes. So you're gonna have to make sure that you play around these different barricades and you're gonna make sure that you figure out how to play around the terrain, which is also a huge aspect of PvP in general.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's being able to use the pillars and being able to use basically the holes in the ground to your advantage is definitely going to be big and important. Now, I know they also mentioned stuff like there's going to be outdoor arenas. I think that's pretty cool because I think it was in a tweet or something or in a forum post where Bashiok talked about how there's going to be shrubbery and stuff. And oh no, actually, wasn't it one of the foreign Twitter accounts?
It was the Korean Twitter said that there's going to be different kinds of. Basically, these arenas are in Sanctuary somewhere, so they take place in the game. Obviously, you can't just walk to it. As far as I'm concerned, you're gonna have to maybe talk to somebody or queue up right in the BattleNet interface. But these take places. The arenas take place within Sanctuary, so it's not just some random place, and they put together some stuff in a map, and there you go, play it. So, yeah, it fits into the lore somehow.
Yeah, no, that's definitely. I really like that idea, and I'm really hoping that they take some of the aesthetically pleasing areas of the game and just form those into arenas. And I also really hope that this is something that they can make a lot of. Like, I want more than 3 arenas, I would love like 10 plus different arenas just for a change of pace, just for something that looks a little different.
Definitely.
I definitely think that would be something that would be pretty solid, I would have to say. Now, in terms of the PvP system, what else can we mention? I know that we talked about the custom games, and I know actually before going over this, you and I talked about, hey, how cool would it be if you could have like a 2v2v2 or something like that?
Right.
Now, in terms of what we currently know, there's a maximum, right, on the number of players that are going to be in arena?
Correct. I believe it's total of 6 players, and I mean, as of right now, it's just 2 teams. So basically, you could do 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, and then you could do your kind of assortment of kind of 6 players, like 4v2, 5v1, whatever you want in custom games. Now, like Dennis was just saying, him and I were talking about something like maybe they add a green team, so now you can do 2-on-2-on-2, or maybe even a free for all. How sick would that be?
Oh God, that's. I think that's the dream of so many. I mean, again, it's one of those things where it's not the competitive focus. They're not going to balance the game around free for all 6-player play, but
Of course.
they're balanced around the 3v3 system. But that would be a lot of fun, and I know a lot of people would love something like that. So I hope that's something that they at least consider. And it's probably not going to be matchmaking, or I mean, what I should say is it's probably not going to be ranked, because again, we're looking at just the 3v3 ranks, but that'd be a lot a lot of fun. I mean,
definitely. Well, I mean, at the BlizzCon, somebody asked Jay Wilson if there's going to be other like PvP types other than just 3-on-3 PvP. Like, I mean, hell, like imagine capture the flag or something like that.
Yeah, and actually that is something that I wanted to bring up. The different, we look at competitive games with multiplayer. We think about, okay, what different game modes do we have? Well, there's usually a Slayer type mode, so let's think of that as the free for all. Then there's a team game. We know what that's going to be in Diablo PvP. But then, like you said, this capture the flag. We have things like King of the Hill. We have things like what's the other, like not. Where someone carries around an object, so say someone carries around a demon head, and everyone has to target that person. It just does an example. Sweet. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things that they can do. One thing that I think is kind of an issue, though, is that if they're going with the way it's currently looking, where you die and you're out of the round, then capture the flag doesn't work, and King of the Hill is kind of weird.
All they have to do is add a respawn. I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah, no, and that's, I mean, that would be cool if they added it, but I think some people will argue that they're not going to, or that they shouldn't for whatever reason. But I think, yes, if they added a respawn, capture the flag could definitely work. The major concern when we think about things like, capture the flag and no respawn is that there's no healing. Like, if there's no respawn, fine. As long as there's a healer, that's cool. But there's no healing. That's what Diablo is not about healing. It's about blowing shit up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, think about games like Black Ops or any of the Call of Duty games, really. I mean, basically, you run around, you blow shit up, and then if you die, you die. You come back.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's an interesting thing, and that's nothing that we've seen because how they've described arenas has been team games, and it's been you die, you're out for the round. But I think, as you mentioned, that's something they could easily implement, and if they did, I think that would be a lot of fun.
Well,
to be honest,
they respawn you after the round's over. So I mean, I gotta imagine that the functionality is already there.
That's too complex. They can't do it.
So now, other than PvP types, something that we should probably talk about is the possible rewards. Now, I believe that we talked about this earlier also. I feel like in every cast we kind of talk about PvP somehow.
Well, that's because we're obsessed. So.
Yeah. So basically, as I understand it, Blizzard they're not going to let us kind of get new weapons, new armor. They don't want PvP to be a resource or a way to get any other items that we can't get in PvE. I mean, actually, they don't want us to get any items in PvP as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
But what we can get is stuff like achievements and titles and, I don't know, just other kind of things that make us look cool. And basically, we could say, hey, we're the best of the best in the ladder. But, I mean, as far as I'm aware, there's not going to be any, tangible rewards.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we've talked about in prior podcasts. It's been discussed a lot on the forums. I've discussed it in my videos. Right off the bat, we know there's not going to be tangible items. There will be no swords. There will be no armor, staves, gems, whatever, amulets, runes. There'll be nothing like that. Like you mentioned, it's gonna be things like titles. Now let's before we talk about the hypothetical or what they could or what we hope they do, let's talk about what's likely. The achievements, whatever. I get a stupid little icon where someone inspects my profile, they see it. Nobody cares. I mean, I know some people care, but it's not. I don't know. As a gamer, no, it's not. That's nothing that's worthwhile. But I'm gonna say, if anything, if they don't want to give me an item, if they don't want to give me something that makes my character better, but just makes my character seem cooler, because I mean that's what these types of games are. That's what RPGs are. We want our character to be the coolest looking thing on our realm, in the game, in the arena, wherever we are. That's what we want. So So things they can actually give to us. Well, okay, they can give us a title that goes over our head. Cool.
Dyes.
Colors. Yeah, dyes.
Yep.
I think that would be really cool. Like, say you're the best arena player, you're number one in your whatever your ladder, your division. You should get a rainbow dye or something. I'm just kidding. But
yeah.
I mean, there should be some obvious like glaring color. Let's say like a gold or even something shimmery, like if they put some nice effects on it. I'm not trying to sound like these really lame colors, but just it should be something that's obvious that sets you apart from all the other dyes, if that's something that they do. But besides that, in all honesty, if they're not going to give us items and all they're going to give us is intangibles, I think dyes would be the only thing that I would actually give a crap about.
Yeah, probably.
Because again, a title over my head, who really cares? An achievement icon, again, doesn't really make a difference. I've got achievement icons in StarCraft. I don't give a crap.
Yeah.
It doesn't,
well,
you know what I mean?
I mean, in D3, I don't really think we're going to be able to get achievement, like avatars or icons like you're saying. Because, I mean, if you think about it, StarCraft 2 is really just... These icons are kind of based on whatever race we play. Now, in Diablo 3, I'm assuming our icon is going to be our character, and they'll do something like World of Warcraft where the icons kind of scale with your character level. So, I mean, I don't even think achievement like avatars or icons are even possible. I mean, yes, achievements definitely, but I think that gives us one less thing. Now, dyes, like we were just talking about, kind of think about it, it's kind of like decals in StarCraft 2.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. That definitely sounds right. I mean, in all honesty, I think that's what we're going to be looking at. Besides the achievements, besides the titles, I think dyes is what we can expect. Now let's pull into kind of the wish list. All right, I think if it's going to happen, it'll be like a year and a half or 2 years down the road if we actually ever get gear. But before that, I would really like if they would at least consider gems and charms. I think that if they could add some sort of gems and charms that were, I guess you could say PvP focused, I think that would be cool. If they don't, I mean, I understand as they're making the game, I get why they don't want to give us gear, because they want us to go through the dungeon that they've spent 30,000 hours building, and they want us to go through that a lot to get the gear, because it means we're playing the game, and obviously that's the focus of this company. They want us playing the game as much as possible, so we keep Blizzard loyal, basically. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that makes sense. They want us to go through the dungeons. I'm fine with that. But if you could give something that's not going to be game breaking, like some gems that are PvP focused, without saying the word resilience, something that will help your character specifically for PvP, or possibly even charms, I think that would be kind of a fair compromise.
Yeah, I kind of actually like the idea of charms. I hadn't really thought about that much. I mean, basically these things, and we'll have a special spot in our inventory for those that don't know. It goes on the talisman. So I think charms would actually be a pretty cool idea. And I mean, specifically what they said in the official site with that is that it's not an ideal venue for gathering weapons and armor. So I guess that specifically kind of means gear. I mean, they didn't say anything about making your character better and this and that. So I mean, charms are definitely possible. And something that I was just thinking about was maybe we can get like discounts for different things in towns. I know that some quests in Diablo 2 give you like a 10% discount on everything in towns. Maybe stuff like that. Maybe discount on artisan stuff. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no, and that's I think that even seems reasonable. And you know what else I'm going to say? Doing something like that, having that cross platforming, meaning specifically from PvE to PvP. Having reasons to do both is something that they're going to want to do as well. So as a PvE player, someone who likes to just grind the dungeons and just do that, having a discount on selling and buying things and repairing would be a reason for them to step into the arena. So that seems like a logical kind of thing to make players, because again, remember, the focus of Blizzard is to make us want to play this game and play every aspect of it. Right. So having something like that would make a lot of sense to me if they did something like that.
Oh, and I mean, PvP itself is basically, I don't want to say centered around PvE, but in order for you to be decent in PvP, you have to play the game. So that way, I mean, you have the gear to play PvP to begin with. So I don't see any reason why certain PvP things can't relate back to PvE. You know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, so that pretty much does it for PvP. I think we definitely beat that horse. Either way, I mean, I know we're both excited. Can't wait. I know a lot of people in general are excited about the system, and I'm sure it's going to be something we talk about in the future as well. So that's going to move us right on into the poll. Now, last week's poll, just going to go over that really quickly. There was a resounding victory for people wanting to basically, I don't know, grind a lot. Well, I mean, basically, the victory was for people stating that the required amount of gems to get to the highest level gem was way too much. We weren't really happy with that. I think it was 142 votes. It took 67%. And that compared to the last one, the one that came in last place, with only 7 votes, which was saying that all gem levels should drop in the game. So obviously, people don't want it to be easy mode. They want it to be difficult. But at the same time, they don't want it to just be completely absurd, which was previously pretty absurd. Like with only the first 5 levels dropping, it was over 6 digits that you needed, basically, right? It was some ridiculous number that you needed to get the 14th level gem.
It was like over 19,000.
Yeah, that's a little much. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be the case that, you're still going to have to grind for the gems, but it's easier than it was before. So thanks to everyone who voted in last week's poll. Now, this week's poll, we're going to be keeping on target here, keeping on the theme pretty much of this podcast, which is going to be PvP. You want to go ahead and go over that poll for them this week, Kevin?
Yes, sir. So this week's poll is basically just asking, are you going to PvP? We want to know who's interested in PvP as a whole, because we're interested in PvP, and if you're listening to this cast, you better be interested in PvP.
Or else.
Yeah, or else. So basically, our options are as follows. We have never, screw PvP. And then we have maybe once I'm done with PvE, maybe, yeah. And then the third one is every once in a while, which is kind of okay for that casual player. And then the fourth one is a good balance between PvP and PvE, which is probably something that I'm going to do. I mean, I'm going to play PvE, PvP, I'm going to end game stuff here and there, And then the last one we have is mostly PvP with just enough PvE for gears and levels, and I'm assuming that's going to be your vote, right, Dennis?
Yeah, I haven't casted it yet, but in all honesty, it's it's a tough situation, to be truthful, because you need the best gear to be competitive. In a game like this, you need the best gear to be competitive. So you have to PvE a lot, but at the same time, if you want to hone in on your skills, you're going to have to PvP a lot. So it's honestly, and the truth is, it's probably going to be a good balance between the two. It's probably going to be that option. But if I had a choice, it would be mostly PvP with a little bit of PvE just to get the gear. But again, in a game like Diablo, you have to grind forever to get the best gear.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of the way it is. But yeah, there you have it. So anyways, we do want to know what you think, like Kevin said, so you got to go ahead and go over to DiabloFans.com. The poll is going to be on the right-hand side there. You just got to log into your account, and then you can cast your vote, and we'll give you a recap of that next week. All right, so that's going to bring us into our final segment, which is going to be user questions. Now, remember, if you have any questions, usually the day of or the day before the podcast always going to be recorded on Thursdays. We're going to post up on each of our individual Twitter accounts that we're going to be needing some questions for the podcast. So you can just go ahead and go over those Twitters, and that's going to be twitter.com/4strategy or twitter.com/thechatgem. All right, so our first question coming from Facebook is going to be from Alan. Actually, we got a few questions from Alan that we're going to answer, mostly because they're kind of rapid-fire answers, not going to take much explanation. His first question is, this is sort of a Battle.net/D3 question. In Diablo 3, will my Battle.net friends list be imported from D3 to D3 from other games, SC2 and such, considering that it's a Battle.net 2.0 feature? Kevin, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So basically, your real ID friends will be universal. So anybody that you have added on World of Warcraft or StarCraft 2 as a real ID friend, which means that you have to add their email address, those are going to port to Diablo 3. However, any friends on StarCraft 2 or World of Warcraft where you actually added their character name and ID, or for World of Warcraft's character name, those are not going to port over. So anybody that you're playing StarCraft 2 or WoW with and you want to play D3 with them, make sure you have them added for real ID.
Yeah, Real ID is the one that specifically goes from game to game. And I mean, this is pretty much the case now. If you're playing WoW, you're not going to see your people on the StarCraft 2 buddy list unless they're Real ID, and vice versa. So there you have it. His next question is basically, what classes are we going to play? There you go. So he's asking specifically, I know myself, I'm going to be playing the Barbarian from the get-go. Kevin?
Almost vaguely, I don't know. I mean, I was up until the Demon Hunter got released, I was definitely 100% going to play the Wizard. So as of right now, I think I'm going to play the Wizard and then kind of play a Demon Hunter as my alt. And then Tyler, him and I've talked about it a lot. Up until the Demon Hunter got released, he was the same way about the Witch Doctor. So I'm pretty sure he's going to play Witch Doctor with a Demon Hunter alt also.
There you go. Yeah, no, For alts, I don't know. It's tough. Like, I know I'm gonna play the barbarian. That's gonna be my main character. For alts, it's either actually gonna be the wizard or the monk. Looking again at the monk recently, looks like it could be pretty cool. I mean, that thing, I don't know. Something about him I don't really like. I think that's why I went straight with the barbarian. And I always like casters in general, so I think that's why wizard's my main focus choice. But I feel like I'm gonna give the monk a shot. I wanna see what he's all about, you know.
Monk is pretty sweet. I played him at BlizzCon, and I don't know. I'm not big into the whole melee thing. I like casting in ranged and stuff like that. But I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm gonna end up playing all the characters at one point in time, but I'm probably gonna focus mainly on the wizard. And I'm sure you're the same way about the barbarian.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So Alan's last question. And I swear we're going to move on to other people after this. These were just really quick questions. So the third question was, are any of you, Force or Diablo fans team, going to do a big sweepstakes for beta key, or are you going to do a random pick system? Well, let's see. Why don't you pick that one up, Kevin?
So, I mean, basically, this is something that Dennis and I have been talking about a lot lately. And I mean, we're both definitely going to be giving keys out. Just how many keys, that's kind of iffy. And I believe somebody else asked how many keys are going to be given out. So there you go. We just killed two birds with one stone. So, I mean, how many keys we're going to have is kind of iffy. We're definitely going to be giving the keys out in some kind of fashion. I mean, we're thinking about a contest. We're also thinking about some kind of just random sweepstakes with some kind of requirements, like subscribe to the channel, have an account, Diablo fans. But, I mean, we're going to make sure that it's fair and that everybody has a possible chance of winning.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's just, it's going to come down to how many. And like Kevin just said, we're going to probably try to mix it up. We don't want it to be completely random, and we also don't want it to be a complete contest, because that's not fair to the other end of the spectrum, basically. So there you have it. There's going to be something, but as to specifically what, we can't really touch on that quite yet. All right, so our next question's coming from Marcel, and he asks, let's see, will Diablo 3 have an editor like StarCraft 2?
He or she?
I don't know. Marcel, it sounds like a guy.
Does it?
I don't know.
All right.
Listen, man, I'm sorry, Marcel, if either one of us just offended you. But anyways, asking if there's going to be an editor where you can build your own dungeons. That is a big no, as last I knew. Now, that sounds awesome. That sounds really cool and fun, but it's not going to happen, last we heard. I think the main reason was just due to the whole random aspect of the game. I mean, that's what Diablo is. It's about random dungeons. You play through things that are completely different. So having an editor with static areas doesn't make a lot of sense. I guess with that said, though, I don't see why they couldn't add an editor, and you can have as part of the editor
fill in the
insert random block here. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
this is something that we talked about in one of the earlier casts, and you can kind of just go back to the cast if you guys are interested in this kind of thing, because I know we talked about it in depth. Basically, what happens is Blizzard said, "Hey, it's a great idea, and it's something that they thought about." But I mean, it's aside from the fact that stuff is ridiculously random as they have it, it's also a huge project for them to undertake. So, I mean, as from what I gathered, they said, cool, if you guys want to make your own editor as a third-party thing, more power to you. If you guys can take the Diablo 3 engine and turn it into something that you guys can have fun with, that's cool. I mean, we're not going to stop you, but we're also not going to be able to support or help you with it.
There you go. All right, and so the next question is coming from Mike. And Mike asks, now I know for sure this one's a guy. Mike asks, the item system for characters, has it changed from D2? Like, I couldn't imagine a barbarian in D2 with a bow. Does the same thing apply for D3? Will it be viable for a monk to carry around a huge sword? And then he puts in parentheses, excluding attribute requirements. Now, before we answer this question, I want to actually touch on the attribute requirement thing. It's not going to be the same as it was in D2 in terms of those attributes, because we don't pick our stats anymore. They're picked for us. And so gear and stuff is actually just going to be based off of level.
And class.
Level and class. So it's not going to be you need X amount of strength. They're going to, since the strength and stuff is increased for you, or power, or whatever the hell we're dealing with, since that stuff is done for you as you level, then it's just going to be you need to be at X level and X class.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess they could say, like, it requires 25 strength, and in order for you to have 25 strength, you have to make sure you're at basically this level, or you have stuff that adds to your strength requirements. Yeah. So just in terms of gear itself, like he mentions, a barbarian with a bow or a monk with a claymore, like the size of his body, that stuff doesn't make sense. Is that going to be part of D3, Kevin? I don't believe so. From what I saw at BlizzCon, I I want to go ahead and say that all, or most, if not all, items have a class requirement. For example, I mean, there were certain items I couldn't pick up as a wizard. Like I couldn't have a dagger. Or actually, I think that's a bad example. I think I can have daggers because I mean, you can have like offhand items and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't believe I'm going to be able to use a huge sword as a wizard and stuff like that. I mean, it requires a barbarian or say whatever. I mean, a monk, whatever. I don't know. But no, I'm pretty sure that almost all items have a specific class requirement. So I don't think you're going to be able to see a barbarian using a bow unless it's tailored for the barbarian specifically and it's like tremendous and it's like some kind of war bow or something. But I mean, obviously that's speculation. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, that seems like a reasonable... Again, they're trying to keep things as logical as possible when it comes to who's using what. All right, so there you have it. That pretty much does it for questions. Like I mentioned prior, if you have questions, make sure you just hit up either one of our Twitter accounts. And, yeah, I think that pretty much does it for this episode. So, for Kevin, this has been Dennis. And, I don't know, I guess we'll just see you guys next time, huh?
Yeah, I hope so. Take it easy, guys.
See ya. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I love playing with my PvP. Knock knock. Who's there? Diablo. But you're dead. Shh. Don't tell that to the development team.